Hey everyone, I'm Gracie. Welcome to the Grace of a Military Child podcast. The world should know how unique military children are. We may look like normal children on the outside, but we go through some pretty extraordinary circumstances that shape us to the leaders we are today. Keep listening to hear the incredible journey this week's guest has been on. Hi Jacob, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, Gracie. I am doing good. It's Saturday morning here in Orlando, Florida. Can't complain.
Yes, exactly. So tell me a little bit about your service member and like their branch and what that is all about.
Yeah. So my dad, Dan Healy, was a Navy SEAL for 15 years or 13 years in the SEALs, 15 years in the Navy. And he was killed in action June 28th of 2005 in Afghanistan during Operation Red Wings. He was in a helicopter in a rescue attempt, or QRF, and his helicopter was shot down by an RPG as they were coming in to attempt the rescue.
Wow. So take me back to that day. What do you remember of that day? How old were you?
Yeah. So, it's been so long. So it's like the vivid memories stay. I remember my grandma's scream. That was the first thing. I was upstairs and I heard this like bloody murder scream. And I somehow made it down my stairwell in like two and a half leaps to go see what was wrong. And she just had a phone in her hand and she was like broken. And she looked up at me and she just said, "Your dad." And I was like, oh. And, I let a nice cuss word out and I walked out of the room. Which I wasn't allowed to cuss, I didn't want to have like a bad mouth, but I dropped a bomb and walked out and sat down and I just like stared forward, kind of numb. And my sister, she walked out. She was like, 2.5 seconds behind me, and she walked out and she looked at me. And like my world just kind of broke. Like when you have to tell somebody else where it's going to hurt them, it was the hardest thing. And for many, many years, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life and I didn't even tell her. I looked at her and she said, "What was wrong?" And I said, "Don't worry." I said, the family's coming over soon. Don't worry. And she, she, knowing something was wrong, went out actually into the backyard where I could see from where I was sitting, from where I was. And she started praying. She got down on her knees and she started praying. And she was just looking away, like out. We had this open valley in our backyard and she was looking into the open valley and praying. And I just watched her for like 15 minutes. And that was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And having to, not necessarily completely break the news, but having to see that, having like her know
That's right.
what's going on, and having to just to watch that is hard enough. And then actually knowing that it might be hard for a little while.
Yeah. No. There are people out there who know that feeling of carrying a hard truth or some type of knowledge burden and having to keep it to themselves. And they know how hard that can be. And like I said, it was one of the hardest things that I have had to do in my life.
Yeah. And it's hard to keep that to kind of yourself, knowing what's really going on and not being able to share that. saying like what actually happened, or, having an idea of what fully happened.
Yep. And so shortly after that, it was a mix up. The way we found out, it shouldn't have happened over the phone. Typically there's a knock, and the knock had gone to a previous listed address, and it was in the family. My aunt lived at that house, so she called because she couldn't carry the burden, and they were like, don't call anybody. Like, we're going over there right now to give them the knock. But she called my grandma. She couldn't like keep that information. And so that's how I found out like that. But then they arrived shortly after, and it was just this huge mess. Of course, family pours in from everywhere. It had been on the news for days already. And I feel like, so it was July, I think it was July 3rd or 4th, and we had heard. So, and it was June 28th. So, it had been airing on the news for days. And, I guess the biggest blessing, which everybody, the world kind of knows about, is, we found out he died like days after it happened. So by that time, they had discovered that there was probably a survivor, that there was somebody missing, and that for whatever reason gave us like this huge hope. I think we all knew in our hearts that it wasn't our dad. They said, one of the Navy SEALs is alive, and pretty much everybody in the family knew it wasn't our dad, because he wouldn't want to be the one that survived. And so, sure enough, we find out that it was Marcus Luttrell. And to know that just one of my dad's teammates survived was, we took a lot of solace in that. And to this day, we do.
Yeah. It's hard, not knowing and, watching it all play out, and then not knowing and hearing that one of them is probably still alive, and sitting there wondering, like, could it be? And, pretty much knowing that it's probably not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. He raised us to be strong, and on principles, like always try your best and never give up. And he showed us how to be leaders. He didn't tell us how to be leaders. And so when this moment just started to transpire, I immediately knew this is the man that my dad would want me to be right here. Like it, it's like the whole don't cry thing. I definitely cried, but I was prepared to fall into those shoes, like so many surviving families and sons are. You see this all the time. I was recently in a gala in Colorado for an organization that supports surviving children, and there was this kid, and he was a hockey player, and he was only like 10 or something, and he had a little brother like 2.5 years younger, and he had like a little sister, I think. And just watching him, he did a little demonstration with this hockey, and the way that he took care of his little brother, the way that he like wanted his brother to succeed and be strong, it was so just like obvious. It was so evident in the way he carried himself. And I knew immediately, because I've been through that he feels like the responsibility of becoming the new man of the house is his. He was like 10 to 12 years old, but it's so common with these military families who lose their parent. They fall into those shoes and just like it's instinctive. Like they just soak up that responsibility and they can't, it's a burden. And I think it really, in many ways, it's such a blessing, but at the same time, it prolongs and almost like cuts off a certain like maturity development. It's very weird, but I discovered in myself that my maturity sort of halted at a certain age in certain ways, that I stopped developing. I stopped growing up in certain ways from when I was 15, when it happened. In many other ways, which my community and, those around me have noticed that I've developed like way further. I do a lot of like public speaking or fundraisers or advocacy, or, I'm an ambassador for several organizations. I take a lot of risks. I travel. I network. I have no problem networking. And that happened immediately. Like I felt like I had a responsibility to fill a lot of those shoes immediately. So, it's a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. When my dad was injured, it was just me and my sister living with friends for about a month. And, I felt that responsibility to take care of her, because not only was my dad in the hospital, but my mom was in Texas with him and we were in Ohio with friends. So it's like, in these situations, you feel like you are obligated to step up. You have no other choice but to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet you held that responsibility well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
and
did.
Still to this day,
yeah.
Like, we're very thankful that, my dad is still here with us and, we're all living together still. But it's still, I think any older child can say it's your responsibility to watch out for your younger children, no matter the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And, like on that, I feel like I didn't necessarily, I could have been such a better brother. I could have been such a better big brother. I have 4 sisters. And in hindsight, I know I could have given them so much more and just been a better leader. But, I know that now. And so here I am, over a decade later, trying to fill in those gaps, knowing what gaps I left behind. And so, yeah. But kudos to you for being that.
Thank you. I think, and I mean, same to you. Like, I couldn't imagine walking through those shoes and having to still take that responsibility and kind of, lead your family along in such trying times that you really don't know what's next. And then, still, doing your best to keep going and to keep encouraging your family.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, that part, I guess, was easy because like I said, my dad, he raised us on these principles, right? Like these core values. And so it was always easy for me to be like, what would dad have me do? How would he have me react? How would he have me act in this situation?
Yeah.
And I always had those core values to think about and fall on. So that paved the road for me for so long, and I attribute a lot of the success I had, or growth that I had, the experiences that I was able to have, I attribute it to him and the leadership that he left me with. It really pushed me. I challenged myself in his honor to be uncomfortable, to do new things. And so I he definitely left me with so much of that. I mean, when I was in college, I was like, they had offered a study abroad to go to Istanbul, Turkey. And I remember like everybody was like, why would you go to Turkey? Like, it's dangerous over there. And I was like, I had known that my dad trained and kind of gone through Istanbul. And I was like, I'm doing everything I can to go. And I did. And it was a very, very short, or not short, it was a very small class size. Like nobody went, but it was amazing. And there was not much to worry about. There was a little to worry about, but not much. And it was totally worth it. And I 100% attribute, my dad's life and sacrifice to pushing me to do that, to get way out of my comfort zone and go do that and carry that experience with me for the rest of my life. So, and of course that's happened in a lot of different respects, but travel is a very, I don't know, it's just a very obvious one.
Yeah. And especially connecting kind of those pieces together of your dad training there. Mm-hmm. Then it's like, why would you kind of pass by that opportunity that you had?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What was it like growing up a military child? What kind of experiences do you have, or what was it like?
Well, my upbringing was definitely not typical. I mean, it's common in the SEALs, but my mom and dad were divorced like sometime between 4 to 6 years old, when I was 4 to 6. And actually, to go even further back, my mom met my dad when I was turning 1. So he wasn't my blood birth father. He decided to inherit me or take me on as his son. And actually I was 6 months old. And they had my sister a year and a half later. So my sister is a year and a half younger than me. And then my mom and dad divorced. And a lot of it was due to the immediate stress of of being a Navy SEAL. My dad was at SEAL Team 1 in San Diego, and the opportunity to go to Hawaii with his platoon came up, and my dad took it, and my mom ultimately decided that she wasn't going. And I'm pretty sure they had some challenges, but she decided she wasn't going. And then they divorced sometime after that. And so from that point on, it was like we got to see, my sister and I got to see who I fully consider my dad. We got to see him 2 weeks out of the year. And for the rest of our lives, I remember a few years where I saw my dad 3 days, and he would try to schedule trainings and layovers through San Diego so that he could just, in between trainings, in between deployments, in between anything, he would try and run into San Diego, take us out to pizza, take us to Fun for All, go mini golfing, go hit some balls at the driving range, go bowling, and just compacted that time and just did as much as we could in that time. And then he was off again. So we treasured the time that we had with him. And so that's not typical. I'm sure you can relate because you have the same value on time with your dad. You knew he would be gone for long periods, and so you knew that when he was home, you had to be on your best behavior and also just soak it in and respect it. So And I'm sure you can relate, and all military kids can relate to that. I just had this like extra barrier, divorce and separation and distance that added a whole lot to that. So, it's a little bit hard, but like I said, we treasured the time that we got with my dad. One of my favorite things that he would do, he would just have these big gestures, right? Like, because he hated being away from us for so long. So he would show up with huge gestures. And one of our favorites was he would fill up sometimes 2 big black industrial garbage bags with chem lights, glow sticks, and give us like literally 1,000 chem lights. And we, I feel bad about it now, but we would like literally hustle them to the rest of the neighborhood kids. We'd sell them for like $1 to $2 a piece because they were like military grade, like these crazy chem lights. But and we were the coolest kids on the block because we had them. But that was one of his huge gestures. Whenever he came home, he would just show up in these big ways. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's definitely an added pressure, I guess, to cherish those moments and to take it all in, because, not only that you're a military family, you're a military child, but you also had divorce on top of it, which made it even less time that you saw him. And then you had to even kind of step it up to make sure you remember those moments and remember those times that you actually had as a family together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What have you done kind of since, your dad's passing to kind of honor him and remember him?
So, I've done a lot, and I've really put myself out there to figure out what works the best for me. And one of the things that I enjoy the most, which I'm still doing to this day, is pushing myself mentally and physically to be a better man. And so I do that through like long distance things. I have a swim coming up, the Tampa Bay Frogman swim in January, and it's a 3-mile swim across the Tampa Bay. And it's a Navy SEAL event, and I'm doing it in his honor. I'm swimming for him. And I've always really enjoyed and loved things like that, pushing myself to be better physically and mentally in his honor, because I feel like he would want nothing more. That's just who he was. He was like this athlete, fit, strong. And so I can always sort of bet or hedge my bet that he would be proud of those achievements. And then, I've done a lot of other things, like I said before, public speaking, to raise awareness and funds for other organizations, and a lot of just public relations stuff, talking to news channels while we're doing events or commercials. I did get to do a global campaign commercial with 5 Hour Energy, where I got to, highlight my dad. And I even got to do a little documentary where I got to speak about him. So those things are great. I've made videos about my dad that, on YouTube have surpassed a couple 100,000 views. And I've had people come up to me like, tell me that they saw that video, complete strangers. So that's really, really cool. So the whole, public legacy, my dad's legacy, developing that has been a big part. And then one thing that I really try to altruistically do is mentor other Gold Star kids, other kids who have lost their parent in the military. And it has slowed down so much over the last 2 years because I've been getting busier and busier, starting my company and working in video production and filmmaking. But I've been doing that for 7 years here in Florida and elsewhere. Here in West Palm Beach with an organization called Operation 300. And I've mentored, I've had the privilege and honor of mentoring hundreds of kids and watching them grow up over the last 7 to 8 years, which has been very humbling.
Yeah. And not only it's more special and more relatable because not only have you walked through it, but you're walking these other kids through it of it's going to be okay. Like, I know it's hard now, but there is a future. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to sound morbid or anything like that, but, kids are so resilient, and I've only had 1 or 2 kids call me with, feelings like that, where they're like, "Hey, I'm having an awful, awful time." Like we had bring your dad in day for work, or we had a daddy daughter dance, or, I've only had like 2 to 3 kids who have just called me over the last 8 years, with just feeling just torn. Most of the time you hear from the moms, and the moms are like, "Hey, it's a really hard year for him. And, he's just having a tough time." And I mean, the questions that these kids ask their moms are the worst. They're like, "How could you even think of this?" So every year we have the opportunity to mentor them, to spend time with them. And I hope that it makes a difference. I really do. And I believe that it does. So a lot of these kids, they come out good. They come out smart and strong and resilient. And so I have faith that they're all going to be great. They're all going to turn out great.
Yeah. And I think that's really special to kind of, get to mentor these kids and get to know them, get to know, the good times and the bad times and everything in between, and to be there for them and to just take them along the journey and watch them grow and watch them, struggle, and then find that, it all turns out. It all turns out. And then, kind of being able to look back on that and see, every step of the way.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So what are you doing with video production, and how did that start, and where are you looking to go with it?
Thanks for asking. Yeah. So video production has always been a passion of mine since middle school. I've been making videos whenever I could sort of get my hands on the camera. And I received my first commission to tell us a story, to produce a short documentary, a 5-minute short documentary for Angels of America's Fallen 7 years ago. And that was my first big opportunity, and really sort of helped me catapult into the field. It gave me a portfolio piece that I could share with people, and help me get hired with a digital marketing agency. I worked there as a videographer for 2 years, from 2019 through the end of 2020, and got a lot of amazing experience, really built my portfolio, and decided a couple of months ago that I wanted to start my company and really run it by myself, to give myself more time to do projects that I want. And it's already happened. In just literally the last 2 months, I went up to Pittsburgh to produce a short documentary for an organization called Legacies Live, and got to interview Gold Star family members and travel, which I love. And so yeah, I'm already doing more of what I love with my own company, but I mostly, it's half and half. I have clients that I can produce content for, whether it's like a highlight commercial or a testimonial or a product shot, I do those. That's half the business that sustains everything and pays the bills. And then the other half is the stuff that I love. It's the Gold Star stories, the military stories with heart. A lot of my dad's friends who suffered invisible wounds, traumatic brain injury, you name it. And now they're, maybe thriving or surviving or struggling today, giving them a little bit of a spotlight and telling stories around them. I think that's where I really want to take it next. I want to give a spotlight to this, to the lasting effects of war on our military, and show that these guys are great guys. They're amazing guys. They've done amazing things. They've helped people in amazing ways, and they are left behind. That's really what I would love to do over the next 2 to 3 years, is build up that platform and share that with the world. So, and then after that, who knows? Maybe bigger documentaries, maybe movies. I do like film competitions locally, so I keep my edge sharp. I just finished a film competition here on immigration, and so yeah, I try to stay sharp, try to stay connected in the community and doing cool things. But the military very much informs a lot of where I go and what I do.
Yeah. And I think getting that awareness out of, the invisible wounds, the wounds that, are secondhand from, service member, trickles down the line to the family, and just showcasing just the military in general is so important, because you see all of these amazing things. You see that we get to travel, that we get to, do all these events, but then you don't really see everything that happens behind the scenes of the struggles, the hardship, the trauma that, a lot of our service members face, and then a lot of these families are facing. And then, you see the hard things that happen on the news. You see these events that take place, and then it kind of hits a reality of our military struggles too.
Yeah. And to your point, you do see them on the news and then they're forgotten about, and, truly they're forgotten about. You see, the poor families, more recently, the bombing on the airport in Kabul, and you see their photos circulate for 48 hours and that's it. Never again. You don't see, you don't get to watch the family around this time burying their kid. You don't get to watch any of the wounded in the hospital suffering with their families by their bedside. And you don't get to watch them go home and deal with losing fellow Americans, or deal with having to go spend time with those families who lost somebody. And that's just the month after it happens. It goes on forever. And the public doesn't have to carry that burden. So it's up to people, it's up to the people like you and I with the story to share it and to keep it alive, and to remind people that, we're still here. And I'm not asking for a sympathy card in the slightest. It's almost like it's almost like, it's just a reminder. This is what happens when you go to war. This is what happens. This is what happens when, too much bureaucracy gets into war. Too much politics gets into war. A lot of special operators and infantry had so many problems and issues with like rules of engagement, and feel like rules of engagement was crippling them. And so in a lot of cases, a lot of Americans died because they couldn't, they were following rules of engagement. And so, I feel like so many of us are reminders that this is what happens. This is how we lose our loved ones, and tread lightly going forward, appreciate more going forward, and remember, of course, just remember the sacrifice.
Yeah, I think that's so important, of just honoring these families and honoring these service members and carrying their legacy. And, even though we don't have, maybe even the slightest bit of relation to them, it's still important that we remember that we share, their stories, their journeys, their legacies they've been on. Thousands have died at war, thousands have been injured, and thousands have came home with these invisible wounds. So it's important that, as military kids and as, Americans, that we just share these stories and share their legacy.
Yeah. And thank you. Thank you for the spotlight and the work, behind the scenes to shine the spotlight. It's incredibly important work. And, I know it's unsung. I know that you don't feel maybe as appreciated or, the gratification that you deserve. So thank you. I just want to thank you personally for doing this.
Well, thank you. It's like it's honestly my honor to just be able to share these stories of, the good times, the bad times, everything in between. These children don't get the recognition that, sometimes we deserve, and some people strive for. And it is important that, the military children are seen too. The service members are always like the first person seen, the first person thought of. And I don't want to discredit our service members by any means, because they are willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice and serve our country. But there's a family behind them. And, the spouses deserve everything for walking beside the service members. And then the children are, barely even recognized. They're like, oh, you get to travel, you get to, do all these things. But it's like, you're not there for the goodbyes. You're not there for the hard times. I spent a week crying on the couch when my dad deployed. You don't see that. You don't see those struggles that we go through.
Yeah.
Nobody sees the experiences.
And I would add that probably one of the most considerations is the kids do not sign up for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. The spouse deserves all the credit because they support them in that endeavor. And that is like truly the hardest thing. But I think that, and I can't pinpoint what it is, but I do believe that the kids deserve something special. They just deserve something special because they didn't sign up for it. And of course, military kids, they're more resilient. They get these just skills, and how they conduct themselves is just so different from the rest of their generation. And so, that's something that they get that's special. They're more resilient. they're maybe more socially like versed or less socially awkward. They understand the notion of sacrifice and service, with which no kids, very few kids understand at an early age. So yes, those things are special, but I really do believe and just wish that kids would get a little bit, like you're saying, more recognition, or just some type of just something special. People try to do stuff with like college scholarships, right? Or technical institute scholarships for military children, because they know what they go through. But I still just would love to see military kids appreciated just a little bit more because they didn't sign up for it.
Yeah. And, we didn't make the decision to be born into a military family or a family that was destined to serve our country. We were born into, the family that we got, and it's not a life that I would have chosen. If I got to pick, like, go to a military family, go to a regular family, I would have not picked a military family. I can tell you that. But I am so thankful, and blessed to have my military family, because, I have my mom, my dad, and my sister, and, they are my life. But, I have this community between other military kids, other spouses, other service members, that when a service member says, these are my brothers and sisters, it truly is your brother and sister. Like, these people are my family. And through everything, like, these kids are like my family. They're like my blood. And you are so right. They deserve so much more than they get. The military instills these values into them when, you don't even recognize it, because the service member, gets all these values, and then the kids get it, and then, their kids get it. And they deserve so much more, because they sacrifice so much for our country that we don't even realize and we don't recognize.
Well said. I don't have anything to add.
What is a piece of advice that you would give to another military kid?
Make the most of it. Make the most of it. It's always easy to look at the cup half full, but I would just encourage all military kids to make the most of it. What does that mean? What are the amenities? What are the benefits that you have access to that other kids don't? Sometimes we take those for granted, and we don't know that they're only there for us. And so make the most of those, and the experiences and the time with your mom or your dad in the service. Make the most of the time with them. Support them, of course. Encourage them. Be a better son or daughter for them, because a lot of military jobs are not fun, and they're doing it to support you. And just make the most of it, because as the Bible says, this too shall pass, and it's not going to last forever. And one day you will look back and wish you had made more of it. That is certain. And I definitely wish I had made even more time special with my dad, but also my time as, a military child when I was younger, made more out of it. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's so special. And just to take every moment and live in the moment, not in the past, not in the future, just live in the moment.
Amen. That's right.
Is there anything you would like to add or anything you'd like to share that I didn't ask you about?
No, I would like to congratulate you on your podcast and thank you for all the work that goes into it. And thank you for sharing me with your audience, Gracie.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Jacob, and thank you for being on and sharing your story. And best of luck to you. And thank you for, just honoring not only your dad, but, working to honor these other families as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Grace of a Military Child podcast. If you enjoyed listening, don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe, review, and comment. You can also follow us at Grace of a Military Child podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for more podcast-related content. If you or someone you know is a military child who would like to be on the podcast, please send us a message to one of our social media platforms, or you can send an email to grace.of.a.military.child@gmail.com. Tune in next Thursday to hear another incredible journey.